Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, Ken, thanks very much. Good evening, everyone. Welcome inside the Fan Cave. This is where we talk sports every single night of the week right here at 412-575-2600. And there's a lot to talk about, of course. The Steelers eliminated in Baltimore, and it's the way they were eliminated that has people concerned. They were really out physical in every possible way. Whenever Baltimore seemed to have the ball, they were just saying, okay, we're going to run it. Here you go. Try to stop it. And they never really could. 300 yards rushing, and that never bodes well for a team that prides itself in stopping the run. So there are a lot of questions, a lot of free agent considerations, and here to discuss is a man who covers this team day in and day out for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, does a fine job, of course, Brian Batko in Studio A. Brian, good evening. And just first of all, your thoughts about just the job at hand in this offseason. It is going to be one that is closely scrutinized, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Deja vu, Groundhog Day, whatever cliche you want to throw out there about the way that transpired Saturday night in Baltimore. Not only is it another horrid playoff defeat for this team and Mike Tomlin, but against their biggest rival, a team in their division who they often measure themselves against. The gap has never really seemed wider in recent years between the Steelers and the Ravens. It's easy to forget they dodged Lamar Jackson a lot of times since he became their starter. Now he's got 2 in a row over the Steelers, and they didn't put up much resistance, Bob, as you said.
No, they didn't, and it's 5 losses in a row to end the season. That hasn't happened in a long time, especially not having the lead in any one of them. So I guess, moving forward, it starts about change, and tomorrow, Mike Tomlin will meet with the media at 12:30. You'll watch that one. If you so choose, right here on KDKA, we'll have it on KDKA Plus, that is, at 12:30. And, I suspect there are going to be some moves here with the coaching staff. I'm not sure how many of them there will be, but there's also going to be a lot of discussion about what they do with some of these players moving forward. And there is no bigger position in football than quarterback, and they have to make a decision about how to go about this and how to close the gap and how to eventually locate, Brian, their next franchise quarterback. That's what every team chases. Some hit it quickly, some don't. Some just, take years to find out, and then you go through a bunch of retreads. Sam Darnold's in a case tonight where he got an opportunity to have a really big year, but the last 2 games have not been so much. He's probably cost himself some money there in the free agent market. But what's your best guess about how they may play this quarterback situation?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be anticipation asking about that at Mike Tomlin's year-end press conference. This will be his 18th. This will be my 6th in my time on the beat for the Post-Gazette. And they usually go pretty similarly no matter what he's asked about. He's going to say he never makes change for the sake of making changes. He's got a lot to review and discuss with his staff. I'm sure that's what he'll say about the quarterback position as well. You think back to this time last year, and there were plenty of questions sent his way about Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph. I think he was asked point blank if his 2024 quarterback was on the roster, and he said yes. Well, next thing you knew, a couple months later, everything was thrown into disarray with their quarterback position. So I'm not discounting that they could do that again, but I think they are starting with a little bit better of a situation there with these 2 guys and the winning they did do while they were in there in their respective opportunities. You've got the older guy in Russell Wilson, who Mike Tomlin turned to mid-season. It looked like a brilliant move at the time, and I think he was feeling his oats about it as well. Justin Fields, it's easy to forget that he was, 4-2 when they pulled him out of there to go to Wilson, and maybe he did build some level of trust in the coaching staff. And look, I learned after last offseason with the quarterback position, you never truly know. I'm not going to rule out anything after trading Kenny Pickett 2 years in, signing Russell Wilson, dealing for Justin Fields. I mean, expect the unexpected to some extent now with this, somewhat new regime still. Omar Khan, Andy Weidel at the top of the front office, and Mike Tomlin probably getting a little bit desperate, maybe a lot desperate to get one of those postseason victories. But I just don't see it with another retread. I feel like you went down the Aaron Rodgers / Kirk Cousins road this season. It sparked for a little bit, and then it fizzled out very badly at the end. I think they need to take a different kind of look at this position now.
Yeah, there's so many things that they have to consider moving forward here. One of them is wide receiver, and George Pickens is the number 1 guy they have there. They need him. They need his talent. But they also have had sort of a mercurial attitude with him at times throughout this season. And I'm just wondering, with a year left, how they would play this year. Normally, it's the time where they start talking about extensions. You might remember they did that with Deontay Johnson, only to shortly thereafter get rid of him. And now he's on with different teams, and he doesn't even seem to play. So I'm just curious. I guess my best thing would be to let him play out his contract and not sign him to another one until I absolutely have to. Do you think that's a prudent play, or would you do something different?
I don't know if prudence the right word, but I mean, it's very difficult to find the right path with a guy like George Pickens. It almost takes you back to the 2018 days. I'm not saying he's on the same level of Antonio Brown or even close when AB was at the height of his powers, but yet again, you've got a Steelers offense that its best player is also its most problematic. So that makes it very difficult to come up with those decisions from the top on down to Mike Tomlin. But one thing I think is pretty clear about Tomlin is he's always going to believe that if you have the talent, if you have a player who has ability, he has the confidence in himself as a coach that he can coax the most out of them, that he can manage those personalities, or even when they become egos for guys like AB and to an extent Pickens. I come back to, if a guy is playing well for you and helping your offense and making plays, you can kind of figure it out. But man, 3 years in, Pickens has had a lot of distraction and drama follow him. It won't be an easy choice when they decide what to do with him this offseason.
Yeah. Even if they do decide to extend him, I still think they need more help in that wide receiver room. So that's going to be something, whether it's draft, trade, whatever the case may be. There's so much to talk about over the next several months, and it's always going to be that way. Brian, we're going to take a break. When we come back, phone lines are open at 412-575-2600. That's the number to call as we continue right here on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, KDKA+. Our GMC Sierra tweet of the night comes from Austin Oravec, who says, "This is it, the playoff record since the beginning of 2011 in the city of Pittsburgh. The Steelers have 3 wins, as many as the Pirates, and the Penguins have 62. Of course, that obviously, talking about series, they won back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. They also went to an Eastern Conference final, so they've had more success, but recently not so much as well. So kind of a playoff drought going on right now. We're back with Brian Batko, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Before I get to the phone lines, the running back situation, Najee Harris, they did not pick up his 5th-year option. Are you of the belief that they will move on from him? And if so, how high do you prioritize running back in their list of needs?
I certainly wouldn't do it in the first round again. I think that did not work out for the Steelers in the long run. Not that Najee was a bad player by any means, but I don't think he provided the value that you want out of a first-round pick, and they pretty much confirmed that when they declined his 5th-year option. I think this is a classic case of 2 sides that probably want a fresh start for themselves. And, yeah, I mean, I'd look maybe as soon as round 2, but I still think you can get some big backs who can eat some carries and, provide a nice compliment to Jaylen Warren even to the 3rd and 4th round.
All right, 412-575-2600 is the number to call. Let's go to our number 1 Cochrane Go One Better caller of the night. It's Bert in Rostraver. Hello, Bert. How are you?
Good, Bob. Thanks. Yeah, I think it's time to take the shot with the younger, more talented guy. Keep Fields. If Wilson will stick around as a backup, that may be okay. But with Fields, you get him enough weapons, and maybe he can get the job done for you. If he doesn't, then the worst you wind up with is what Chicago had, and you can get the draft position you need to rebuild, because it's time to do that. It's time to fish or cut bait. The last few years on Tomlin's current contract, I think that's the best way to handle it.
All right, Bert, thank you. Well, I do agree. If I'm going to make a selection, it's going to be to Justin Fields. For the reasons, I agree with that. I think you sign him, it's going to cost you less money. First of all, Russell Wilson won't be a backup. I don't think he wants to be a backup. Would you agree with that, Brian? He's not going to, if he's looking for an opportunity, it's got to be as a starter, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, he told us today in the locker room his plan's always been to play as long as he possibly can. Now, does that mean he's delusional enough to think that he's always going to be a starter, regardless of who he plays for? I don't know. I think he's been a team player and a pretty good team guy and supported Fields during that sticky situation for him early this season. But Bert's going to get no argument from me either. I think with Fields, you can at least kind of talk yourself into the ability that he can put it all together. And yes, the 4-2 start wasn't always that sharp, especially as a passer. But I almost look at it a little bit as a draft pick who got unexpectedly thrown into the mix. He never really got that true reset season that I think he needed at the beginning of the year. Maybe you could kind of chalk that up to now you are going to give him a chance. He got the opportunity to take a step back, watch Wilson, and now maybe with a full offseason, you can come up with a better plan around him.
I would agree with that. I think it's going to cost less money. You can devote it to other positions, and you can see if the ceiling is higher than what some people think of him. I happen to think it is. I think he has so much talent. I think it's just about harnessing it and making him learn to make better decisions in the pocket, when to leave the pocket, all that kind of stuff. I've seen other quarterbacks go around the league several times before they finally reach a level of confidence.
He's only 26, Bob. Some of the guys who are playing well right now, Michael Penix Jr. for the Falcons and Jaden Daniels, I mean, he's not much older than those rookies.
And Bo Nix is 24, right? Is that what he is?
Yeah, another older guy.
Yeah, and so, you know, if you can harness this and somehow get out of it, that'd be one way to go about it. And to the caller's point, if it doesn't work, okay, fine. Maybe you have a record that you need. That's sub 500, puts you in a better draft position. You could look at 2026, because I'm not sure how you look at the 25 quarterback draft out of college. I'm not sold on a lot of them, but that doesn't mean they won't be successful. Me personally, I think it's a deeper one maybe the next year.
Yeah, I mean, the top guys, you know, they're not going to have a shot at them anyway. I wouldn't hate the idea of, especially if you do run it back with Fields, and, you know, it is kind of funny that you put it that way. The fact that he's been kind of a boomer bust player in his NFL career, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of fans want the Steelers to be in more of a boomer bust position, certainly, than plodding along at 10-7 or 9-8 every season and barely squeaking into the playoffs. So, yeah, you know, if you look at one of these quarterbacks who are going to be in the national title game from Ohio State, Notre Dame, Will Howard and Riley Leonard, maybe you take a shot on them in the middle to late rounds and you know, give them an opportunity to get in here. But, yeah, I don't think this is a really good class. It reminds me of the 2022 one when they probably reached for Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. Mark in Pittsburgh is our next caller. He joins us right here on the hotline of the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Hey, Mark.
Hello. A peaceful solution would be if Tomlin agrees to retire at the end of his contract and then put him in a management position, and Tom would always be a Steeler, and he can help pick his successor.
Well, I don't think he'd go for that, number one. Just because I know I've asked him about TV. I don't think that interests him at all, Brian. He wants to coach, and he's signed here for the next 3 years. So that's money that they spent last year. You know, last year at this time, I was wondering what they would do, because I thought they had a year left coming off the way it had ended after, again, consecutive years without a playoff win. I thought they may want to take a look at a 1 year and see where it is at the end of this year. And that would provide absolutely no roadblock in terms of financial commitment.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, it's at least a novel idea. I'll give you credit for that one. I mean, I think we've seen some of those situations over the years in the NFL with very accomplished but also long-tenured coaches who were not having as much success as they did earlier in their careers. Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, neither one of those guys got, quote-unquote, kicked upstairs by their organizations, even if they had that option. They wanted a fresh start, and they wanted to be in the same role they have been for a long time. So I tend to agree that I think Tomlin likes being around the game and the players too much to ever really go for that. It's very difficult to picture him coaching somewhere other than Pittsburgh after nearly 2 decades on the job here. But I tend to think he would probably embrace that challenge more than one like you mentioned, or a TV role or go into the booth like Sean Payton did for a year.
Yeah, I don't think that's part of what he wants to do. He likes what he's doing. He's going to continue to do it. But I would imagine, and I think you agree with this, there are going to have to be some changes on their coaching staff, and there's going to have some accountability about who they bring in next to handle whatever those role changes might be.
Yeah, and if you're at the top of the Steelers organization, and that's the way this goes over the course of this week, now just for timeline purposes, I mean, those changes generally don't take place before Mike Tomlin meets with us on the Steelers beat at the end of the season. So he'll be asked a lot of those questions, and he'll say they're still reviewing it. And then you still might see by the end of the week, Coach X got fired, or Coach Y isn't coming back, or Coach Z is parting ways with the Steelers, not having his contract renewed. But, you know, if I'm at the top of that organization, it might be getting to the point where you have to tell Mike, hey, you only get so many more fall guys until there's just no more road left for you. And especially, you know, go back to the quarterback question for a second. I mean, I was certainly willing to give him some leeway, some runway to try to find somebody in the post-Ben Roethlisberger era, but they've tried pretty much every avenue at this point. The kind of veteran reclamation project in Mitch Trubisky, the first-round pick in Kenny Pickett, the big swing in Justin Fields, and now, of course, you know, the stopgap or, you know, long in the tooth future Hall of Famer Russell Wilson. He hasn't really been able to get over the hump with any of them. So there's only so many variables that you can take out of the equation at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most important position in football, without a doubt. You need one to be successful long term. And even the ones you think may be, we've looked at this playoff run here. You see guys like Justin Herbert really struggle. And he's not the only one. There are quarterbacks that get into the situation and just can't seem to get it done, regardless of their talent level and their contract. But you need one. You got to find one. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest things to watch here over the next several years. It may not be this offseason and maybe later down the road, but they're going to have to figure out something in that department. We got to take a break here. Matt and Christopher will try to get your calls when we come back. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call right here on KDKA+. Ken Rice is standing by in the newsroom with what's going on tonight at 11 on KDKA. Ken?
Hey, Bob, tonight police make multiple arrests in connection with a burglary at a local gun store. We're live. Plus new details in the shooting deaths of a family of 4 in Beaver County. And Ray Petland tracking more frigid temperatures, all coming up at 11, Bob.
All right, Ken, thanks very much. We'll go to the Twitter mailbag here. Brian, Chanel 2048 wants to know, last 6 games, the defense allowed 38 points per game, but the Pittsburgh love affair with quarterbacks as scapegoat continues. That was as big, if not bigger, of the problems they've had here. It's one thing not to score points in the first half of games. That's never good. But when you're giving up on average 40 plus 400 yards, and what we saw throughout this 5-game losing skid, I mean, what was your best take on why this defense simply fell apart?
I mean, Patrick Queen said they got too comfortable, let their foot off the gas earlier in the season. And to something you alluded to before the break there, Bob, we're not trying to scapegoat anybody, a quarterback or whomever, but defensive coordinator Terrell Austin can't be feeling great right now, especially if there's a cultural issue or an effort issue or a physicality issue now with his unit. They might need somebody to shake that group up.
Yeah, I mean, you don't expect them to give up 300 yards rushing, especially when you know that's what the Ravens do. I mean, there was no secret about their game plan in that game. It was going to be Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry. I could only imagine that they were instructed to take Henry out at all costs. And Lamar Jackson just decided, okay, I'll take the ball every time then.
Yeah, I don't think Terrell Austin's a bad coach or a bad coordinator, but, I mean, when you talk about things that might need a change, this defense just completely collapsed down the stretch for the most part, other than playing pretty well in that Bengals game.
Yeah. All right, Brian, always appreciate it. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks,
Brian
Bob.
Batko of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You'd read him every day covering the Steelers. We'll be back here tomorrow at 10:35. Call us, air your opinions right here on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Have a good night. Thanks.